Hello all, and welcome once again to the quiet comfort of our classy little corner where we reflect upon our favorite derided works. You know, the ones that are underrated, unfairly piled on, and just don't get the credit that they deserve. Today, let's reopen the case of a decade-old attempt at bringing a classic hero into the modern age with Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. You may or may not have seen this 2006 soft reboot of Richard Donner's original 1970s Superman, but you may have heard many of the common complaints. Oh, it's kind of boring. No, it's too emotional and uneventful. Oh, it's too similar to Donner's old movies. Oh, Superman never fights anybody, he only lifts things. Well, you know, my friends, it's time to examine these points point by point until I can make my point. Join me, won't you? So, you think Superman Returns is, too dull, huh? Too touchy-feely for you? Not enough action, huh? Relies too much on nostalgia, huh? Well, let me tell you, my friends, why I find this such an underrated gem. Well, this isn't working right. When I think of Superman Returns, I think of a dramatic, exciting, emotionally involved superhero story. Director Bryan Singer and company sought to continue what Richard Donner had started years before, and take his and Christopher Reeve's iconic Superman depiction into the modern era, with all the colorful romanticism into the 21st century as well. In fact, that idea of bringing an old hero into the modern era is sort of what this movie is all about. You see, it starts with Superman having been gone from Earth for several years looking for the remnants of Krypton. He returns, and he finds that the world has been trying to move on without him. Even his soulmate, Lois Lane. This relationship between Superman and Lois almost acts as a metaphor for his relationship with humanity. And all the drama and complexity that such a relationship would entail is explored here. This fractured romance between Superman and Lois Lane is very much at the center of Superman Returns. And the film has been criticized for doing just that, for focusing too much on the romance. However, ladies and gentlemen, the love between Clark Kent and Lois Lane is a hallmark, a touchstone, a key component of the Superman mythos. And it has been for some time, especially in the old Richard Donner movies everybody loves so much. And while we're on the topic, let's touch on that old critique of Superman Returns, and it's an odd one to consider in this day and age, that at the time, to think that this movie was widely criticized for being too similar to the classic 1978 Superman the movie. Relied too much on nostalgia. Well, ladies and gentlemen, look at the pop culture landscape we live in today. We have works like Stranger Things, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, films and TV shows that, while excellent, wonderful, engaging stories with endearing characters, rely very much on callbacks and nostalgia, and they have been celebrated for doing so. But here we have poor old Superman Returns, doing it a decade earlier and being dumped on for it. Well, you might say that Superman Returns is very ahead of its... But even with a movie as fine as this, there do exist flaws. Like some of the story points don't quite hold up to scrutiny. Like what Lex Luthor's plan was once Superman was out of the way. Also, Brandon Routh wasn't quite as capable a performer as a Christopher Reeve or a Henry Cavill, at least at that point in his career, but he still manages to be very likable, sort of brimming with kindness and restrained power. Also, Clark and Lois don't quite have the chemistry they need to, and there are certain scenes that get a little personal, a tad uncomfortable, like Superman secretly watching Lois go about her daily life, or the fact that Superman and Lois had a child that Superman didn't know about. But while those things could have been pulled off with a bit more tact, I think they reflect what I think really works about this movie. The fact that we feel Superman's longing, because real personal situations, they get awkward and uncomfortable. And relationships are messy, and unrequited love is something that anyone can relate to. And how much more do we feel those tears in Superman's eyes as he flies off from his former love out to watch over the world? Superman Returns succeeded in pulling off the duality of Superman being both godlike and utterly human, not to mention the obvious religious allegory that goes along with that, which was a thread that was started in Richard Donner's 1978 original. In Superman Returns, he's both a beacon of hope and someone we understand. There's so much else to say about what this movie does so well. The stellar music, the impeccable production value, the Art Deco aesthetic which makes it feel almost timeless. So many scenes that combine elegant visuals with a moving soundtrack, creating moments and moods that feel like a perfectly orchestrated expression of a definitive vision for Superman. And finally, let's touch upon the visual aspect of this movie. The film uses an array of practical and CG effects to deliver its action, and again, much like Donner's film, it features a lot of Superman saving people and battling environmental hazards. Some might deride this approach, saying with all the wit and grace of an online forum troll smearing himself in the feces of Trey Parker and Matt Stone that the film ought to be called Superman Lifts. Because he's always lifted stuff. That sure is a valid criticism. Boy, it sucks to see Superman dashing around, saving people all the time and battling the elements themselves, but I get it. No, you want to see Superman have some battles, right? Well, I'm sure this criticism will age super well. I'm sure there won't be a Superman reboot that'll have come out 7 years later that features all the things you said you wanted out of Superman Returns. You know, more action, more intensity, more originality, plenty of powerful villains for Superman to fight. And if that ever were to happen, I just know that you wouldn't, I know in my little heart of hearts that you wouldn't complain about that too, right? Right.